welcome. Welcome to our Southern Movement Assembly Mass Meeting. My name is Wendy Shenefeld. I use she, hers pronouns. I'm with Alternate Roots of the Southern Movement Assembly Governance Council, and I am calling in from the lands of the Choctaw, also known as the Republic of Jafrica in Jackson, Mississippi. And my co-host for today is
But what we are seeing from the president is
Suzanne Farr. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Suzanne Farr with the National Council of Elders and the Southern Movement Assembly, calling in from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Congress.
So we have over 200 people registered for the call today from all over the Southern region and all over the country. And so we're asking for grace as we have technical issues that might come up. We're all going to breathe through those together and get through this. So if you're on the computer, if you want to go in the chat and if you haven't already, type in your name, pronouns, your organization, and your state. A few logistics very quickly for the call. We do want to apologize ahead of time that we do not have interpretation for this call. It was kind of a last minute thing that we planned. We typically do have both ASL and Spanish language interpretation, but we will be having that for our follow-up calls, our SMA monthly calls, and most of our Friday calls. This call today is being recorded. If you do not want to be on the recording, we'll ask you to take your video off so that you can, so that you won't be on the recording. We will be emailing out the recording for anyone who registered for the call today. We're asking that everyone please stay on mute until the very end of the call so that we're reducing any sound interference. If you're going to tweet and post about the call today, which we hope you will, please use hashtag Southern People's Power when you post so we can help amplify your tweets and social media posts. And we're gathering here together. We'll hear a little bit more of this from Suzanne Farr in a minute, but we're gathering here together at the request of the Council for Elders. A few of them were talking about the events on Wednesday and thought that we needed, as Southern folk, Southern movement folk, that we needed to gather together, gather our folks up, and that to show that we are showing up for our people in this region, that this is a moment for serious and sharp thinking, and we all have contributions to make at this time. And in that, as we're going through the call today, we want you to populate that chat with any ideas that you have, any questions that you have. If you see someone from your region that you want to reach out to, send them a message so y'all can connect through email. But we definitely want to keep those ideas going in the chat as we're moving forward. So thank you for that. We are next going to go to, I think, Suzanne, we're going to kick it over to Joyce for a song.
Mm-hmm. Right. To Joyce.
Hello, everybody. As all of you know, our tradition is steeped in all types of cultural expressions. We sing when we mourn, we sing when we are jubilant, we sing when we work, even in those fields. But our songs are mixed right during this period because we're having so many mixed emotions. So I'll just share with you one song that was requested and one that we shared on a recent call just a few minutes ago with the elders. And we were recalling the strong spirits of Vincent Harding and Grace Lee Boggs and just many others. I'll just stop with calling names right now. But just join me in your spiritual place, whatever that is. And let us have these songs help orient us for this important conversation. I feel like going on. I feel like going on. The trials come on every hand. I feel like going on. I feel like pressing my way. I feel like pressing my way. Though trials come on every hand, I feel like pressing my way. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on a walking, keep on a talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let fake news turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let fake news turn me around. I'm gonna keep on a walking, keep on a talking, marching up the freedom way. So sometimes we lament, but we get to that place of pressing on.
Thank you so much for bringing us back to our roots and helping us get grounded today. In that same spirit, I'm now going to ask one of our sisters from the Wind and the Warrior, Ife Kilimanjaro, to please just guide us with a few breaths together.
Mm-hmm. Greetings, everyone, and to continue in the spirit of grounding and this moment, the end of this week and the beginning of all that is to come, let us sit squarely and comfortably wherever you are. If you're laying, just be comfortable however you are. And I'd like to invite you to lower your eyes. They can be closed or lower. The idea is to kind of move into a inner and calming, grounding space. And I'd like to invite everyone to take a deep breath on your own, one deep breath on your own, breathing in deep and filling your belly, allowing your belly to expand. Breathing in through your mouth, nose, breathing out through your mouth, nose. We want to just keep it open, organic with that first breath in your own time, at your own pace. And with these next two breaths, I would like to invite everyone to breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. And we'll do that together. I'm going to count a count of 4. So we're breathing in slowly together. And when we're filled up, we're going to hold that for 4 counts. And then we're going to breathe out for 4 counts. And then we're going to hold it and move into the next cycle. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and take it together. Breathing in deep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and releasing through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this last one we'll take together as you're breathing on your own quietly right now. I'm going to share that we'll do the same cycle, taking deep breath in, and we're going to draw in the energy from one another, the support, loving, grounding energy that we're bringing into this space. And we're going to release on the out breath all of that tension, the things that we're holding that we want to let go of and dump as we are connecting with one another today. And so it's a lot to do with one breath, but we're a mighty and powerful people. So let's take it all in, breathing into 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding all of that goodness that we're drawing from one another. Now releasing through your mouth 4, all of that stuff you want to let go, and 4, and letting the rest of it all out. Slowly opening your eyes, joining this space with your eyes open and ready to move forward in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming on this call. We think it's an important thing for us to have it today. 2 years ago, As the political crisis grew in 2019, the Southern Movement Assembly knew that we needed a first 100 days plan for 2021, a plan of action that would begin on January 1st, not January 20th. We could see the dark clouds gathering at that point. So we have a plan, and this call is our first action with the first 100 days beginning on January 1st. In May of 2020, the National Council of Elders asked Nelson Johnson and me to bring the scenarios we foresaw into our group discussion. We meet every 2 weeks. We spoke to the growth of authoritarianism, the power and instability of the president, the building of a citizen army, the corruption of institutions from within, the president's possible refusal to leave office, the growing divisions in the country, the impending organized violence, and the power of holding the nuclear codes. Over the past 6 months, we've been watching those scenarios play out. That's what led us this week to calling for a gathering of our people. And this is what the SMA does. It gathers our people to work together. And now we've seen a crescendo of violence that has brought a domestic terrorist attack against the fragile scaffold of democracy we are trying to build upon. We're trying to build this new, all-inclusive people's democracy that holds fairness and justice at its heart. But this was an insurrection that has been years in planning, and most recently was organized openly on social media by the president and his white supremacist militias. It is a time of heightened, growing danger, particularly for our Black and brown and immigrant brothers and sisters, and we will stand strong against it. It is also a time of great opportunity. Like the heroic Black Lives Matter uprising this summer that revealed and exposed the depths of racism in this country, this attack will reveal and expose the extent of race hatred and hunger for authoritarianism. It is fully in the open now. We will resist and change it. It is a dynamic time because so many things are shifting. People are in movement. Beliefs are being examined and changed. The last 8 months have offered us extraordinary opportunities for creating new norms, bringing more people into a pluralistic society, for exposing and fighting discrimination through political education. Seasoned organizers will seize these opportunities to bring the uncertain, the questioning into the movement. We will grow. We will become stronger. So what we're asking people to do on this call is to speak to one or more of these questions. And here are the questions. What is the historical context for this insurrection, and what is its meaning for our movement? Number two, what are the opportunities opened by this insurrection? How can it be used to advance movement, especially in the South? How to advance our vision and our work? And the third one, what practices can we offer for collective healing, for holding rage and pain and trauma and grief and despair? And what can we offer for creating spirit, safety, energy, and strength for the marathon? Wendy, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for that framing of this conversation and the moment that we're in today. So I'm asking our speakers, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the call today. And we're going to try to keep us to around 5 minutes apiece for the speakers. And first up, we'll have Nia Wilson, who's with Spirit House in North Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, and everyone. I'm really grateful to be on this call. As Wendy said, I am Nia Wilson, she, her, hers. I come from Josephine and John, Lilia and George, Ronald and Elmira. What I'm going to ask you all to do is to continue to be in that space that Ife brought us into, to take a breath, to take some time to actually re-enter your body as you're on this call, to make an assessment of what exists body, identify and stay present with what you carry in your DNA and with what you know in your bones. Try to breathe and release the tension, the anger, and the fear that was brought up for us this week, and instead find a way to be alert, to be ready, to be responsive rather than reactionary. And remember that we know what we know. Black people, while we may have been jarred and triggered by the insurrection attempt, we were not surprised. We are angry, we are disgusted, we are ashamed for this country, we're shaking our heads, but we are not surprised. We know what our ancestors, our elders, and our children have been up against as we've been fighting for our liberation since being brought to this country. We face this anger and hatred every day as others often try to gaslight and dismiss what we recognize behind the eyes of these so-called patriots. The violence has always existed for us. We know what we know. And because of this knowledge, we can make choices with how to respond. We can work together towards our collective healing, withholding judgment of our folks who are surviving daily, using whatever tools that are available to them through this trauma that we've been born into, withholding judgment for those of us who have been force-fed and have fully digested and embodied the lies perfected and made palatable by white supremacy. We cannot fully stand in our power without intentional healing. We must build collective intracommunal power that is rooted in the wisdom of our ancestors and our elders. I'm so grateful for them to be on this call today, and the brilliance, ingenuity, and the vision of our youth. My Brown and Indigenous family, you too know what your communities have endured and experienced. Some of those experiences are shared and similar to ours, and some are not. We must choose to see each other as strong, powerful, culturally rich people who have survived the oppressors who have tried to extinguish us in order to retain power. We must withhold judgments rooted in the lies perfected and made palatable by white supremacy. You know what you know. And because of this knowledge, you can make the choices with how best to respond. For my white friends, I ask that you not separate yourself and other the insurrectionists. This may be hard, and it may be hard to hear, but these are your brothers, your sisters, uncles, aunts, and cousins. The grandfathers you sat with at the Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners. These were your ancestors in Selma, Tulsa, and Wilmington. You know what you know, and because of this knowledge, you can make choices with how to respond. The first step towards accountability is acknowledging and taking responsibility, not in some theoretical and abstract white supremacy is a bad thing type sense. You must name who your people are and what has been done. You are fully aware of this poison of white supremacy that we have all been born into and some have been raised on. Who do you know that agrees with what happened this week? How are you calling them in? As allies and co-conspirators, we need you to face them. You can speak to them in ways that we cannot. We need you to speak to them in your families and in your homes, in addition to fighting with us in the streets. We are on this call as the Southern Movement Assembly because we are part of a diverse, Southern-rooted, multiracial, cultural, ethnic, gendered, able, generational movement. We are strong. We've been building together for years, and we are committed to using the truths that we know to create the world that we deserve. We know what we know.
Thank you so much for that, Nia. Whew. Some of that was hard to hear, but it's settling in my bones. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Nina Morgan, who's with the GASP and the Birmingham Earth Council in Alabama.
Hey, everyone. I'm so happy to be on this call with y'all. And, you know, my words won't be near as graceful and beautiful as Nia's, but I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the opportunity we all have to hold this space together. And so I expect y'all to hold me, and I'll do the same for y'all. I, you know, have read, heard reflections on the contrast between the treatment of the rioters in DC this past week with the protesters who were in the streets fighting for Black lives all last summer. I think that's very clear, the differences in treatment, and it reflects the racism that is the United States, and honestly, it enrages me. And so I feel like, especially for folks who have been in the streets, I know here in Alabama, we have folks who are in the streets, you know, several times a week, really amplifying the need for justice and the need to protect Black lives from the police. And so the rage is real, and I feel like it's valid, and I'm glad we can vent it out, and I would invite anyone who's feeling that rage to just be in community and try not to isolate. And I think that any response that we see from the establishment will try to deter our movement. I think that any response that we see is going to try to, you know, disempower direct action, disempower protesters, and disempower people in the movement trying to fight for a true people's democracy. And I think that's something that we need to be looking out for. I'll say personally, seeing protesters, rioters, whatever we want to call them, seeing the Trumpists break windows at the White House, break in the White House, turn over furniture, you know, I don't know. I'm mourning for our people. I'm mourning for our movement. I'm not mourning for the White House. To me, the White House is a symbol of U.S. imperialism. There's a deep history of violence, of thinking about the people who built the White House. To me, the White House is a symbol of a mausoleum in a way. In my utopian vision, the hubs for people's democracies look nothing like the White House. So I don't mourn the destruction of that structure. But I do mourn the hypocrisy of this country. I think that politicians do need to be made uncomfortable. For too long, people have been comfortable. You got folks who are spending our tax dollars on their furniture, on their expense accounts, using these credit cards to buy dinners and stuff. And I'm just trying to keep it real and also hold this emotion. But I don't feel uneasy about politicians who aren't serving people's interests being made uncomfortable. I do pity folks though being used and being manipulated and being hoodwinked for a white supremacist agenda. I think Suzanne's right. Everybody's right about the opportunities. A lot of people are being politicized in this moment for better or for worse. And so I don't think we should be complacent and sleep on that. I think a lot of political education needs to be happening right now and throughout the year. This is an opportunity to talk about U.S. history and the role we play both domestically and internationally. And this is the opportunity to talk about the role of whiteness and of white supremacy. So I think the opportunity is definitely there. Now is the time for truth telling and calling this what it is. Because there's going to be a battle for narrative. And I think that depending on the way it happens, it can people will be trying to disempower the movement. So we should be aware of that and try to channel the energy that we're all feeling into building our alternatives. So we have P100, the People's First 100 Days. We have plans. We have plans for the region, and then we have plans locally. And so now is the time to lean into those plans and continue to build the world that we want to see and the infrastructure on which it stands. And push Biden. Again, these folks don't need to be comfortable. We got people dying in the street. Now is not the time for these politicians or politicians to be comfortable because our folks are very uncomfortable. And so we have to continue to push Biden. Again, he has his first 100 days and we have ours, and continue to advocate and fight for our vision for the future. That's all I got to say. I'll pass it on.
Look, I love how Nina says that's all I got to say, and she just preached a whole word with her 5 minutes. Thank you, Nina. Thank you. We need to be truth tellers in this moment. Steph, anything you want to uplift from the chat? I know it's a lot going on in there.
Oh, it's awesome. Thank you all. And I'm Stephanie Gilliam with Project South, and I'm doing a little synthesis and trying to catch the hot quotes coming out. And folks are really feeling that those structures of the White House, the Capitol, those are mausoleums. Those are not our structures to fight for. And I'm looking for questions as folks are feeling it, resonating with what's going on, what's being said. Please drop it into the chat, and we will continue to synthesize through this meeting and pull it into the plans. But folks are definitely excited about shifting the narrative and challenging these symbols of democracy and building a true people's democracy. So keep loading up the chat, and I'll keep synthesizing as we go. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much, Steph. Next up, we'll hear from Nelson Johnson with the Beloved Community and the National Council of Elders in North Carolina.
Hello to everyone, and thank you so much for having us to join you today. And I want to thank everyone who's gone before me, especially Nia and Nina for such inspiring and depthful words. I'm encouraged hearing that. We want to share some words that I hope will strengthen us in the journey toward a more just society and a more peaceful world. And in that spirit, I want to invite each of you and all of us to humble ourselves before the great spirit of the universe. And as I do so now, I can even hear the ancestors seemingly trapped in an evil and gone wrong, mad world of slavery and human bondage, singing, I need thee. Oh, I need thee. Bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Sometimes we are driven back to sing with new meaning old songs. Lift every voice and sing until earth and heaven rings. And when earth and heaven rings, it means that we're inspired to do the work we're called to do and do it better. As our minds are more focused and our spirits are strengthened, as our courage and determination grows with greater clarity, as we begin to see and feel a clearer path forward. And as we listen carefully, we can hear the universe singing back to us and strengthening us. I want to say this is a very challenging moment. It is the most difficult, we're in some difficult days, but I want to raise a question here, and that is, how do we understand the moment and the period that we're in? That forms the context, and out of context comes meaning, and anything that you think that's not in context tend to be a distorted meaning. People have been talking about democracy and saving the great democracy of the country. I want to offer a different way of thinking about that. Something is dying and something is being born. And what is it that's dying? It's a fraudulent system that's built around wealth creation for a handful of people, which objectively denies the human dignity, worth, and enormous possibility. 200 years of slavery and ongoing years of oppression and ongoing years of nearly annihilating the American people, that is beginning to die. And the division between the young people and the old people of our white part of the population manifested itself in an attack on the Capitol. But it was an attack to strengthen the old system, not to get rid of it. So I want to invite us to think that that's dying and we are part of actually helping it to die, but not in the way that some people think, because something is being born. And I want to add, when something is being born, there are some birth pains to it. That's difficult too. So we're going through some death moves on the one hand and some birth moves on the other hand, and we want to be on the birthing side. We want to create something beautiful, something new, where the dignity and the worth and the enormous unrealized potential of so many people, especially Black, brown people, is not affirmed and not realized, or not actualized. I really like what I think it was Neil was saying about the contrast between how people who were breaking into the nation's capital, knocking down doors, knocking out windows, and the police were taking selfies with them. Contrast that with how people treated those who got in the street and started to march and to stand up for the dignity of Black people and for valuing Black lives, how they were treated and how the president called the army in on top of them and sprayed them with two different approaches, two different understanding, two different views of what context we're dealing with. So beloved, we could hang out for a while here, but I want to say that when something is dying, I used this earlier this morning as a farm boy from Eastern North Carolina, a dying mule has a powerful kick. And we're up against that right now. But I want you to know that the joy of birth pains, bringing something beautiful and new forward, is a beautiful thing. Beloved, we are a beleaguered nation trapped in the contradictions of our yesterdays. And these contradictions are descending upon us and crying out for resolutions. And I want to suggest to you that a major part of that resolution is going to grow from people like you, from young people who are stepping up and stepping in and answering the call of the urgency of now. And that call is to touch the best within each of us and all of us. That call is to lift up beyond the petty words of sincere words to sincere deeds. That call will free us from the sins, and I say us in an expansive way, free our nation from the sins of its yesterdays, which it has only half repented for. But most importantly, it can empower us and inspire us to build a justice movement that exposes the greed and the hoarding and the wallowing by billionaires and millionaires in the obscenity of too much unearned wealth, as too many people are dying and suffering because they can't have health care. That is the system in place now, and it deserves to die. So help us seek after a deep truth necessary to expose and overcome these lies, even for those trapped in them. And that includes some of the people at the Capitol the other day. And to dismantle an array of conspiracy theories that pit us against each other. All of this and more will be necessary to ultimately deliver us from the current catastrophe of the making of the leaders of this nation. I want to conclude with these words. We ought not be discouraged. We ought to be inspired. Something beautiful is being born, and you're on the right side of it. And so as we push our way into the future, let's build even deeper unity among us. Let's not fall into the pit of the East against the West and the old against the young and this against that. Let's continue to build a broad, deep, and enduring unity and lay the foundation to transform this nation into what it ought to be and in what it can only be if we remain united, we remain dedicated, and we continue to push forward. Lastly, I don't mind saying where I'm from. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, born in Halifax County, North Carolina. And we have just come out of a difficult struggle where 5 of our people were killed some years ago. But the city, after persistent struggle, did stand up and apologize, saying that the Klan and Nazis knew exactly what they were going to do, told the police, and the police joined them in that. That's the kind of thing that our past represent, and we're not careful, it will be what our present will represent. So let us walk together, walk toward each other. And as the old elders say, walk together, children, and don't you get weary. Because there's a beautiful place on the other side of this moment. There's beauty on the other side of this evil that's beset our nation. And we can get there if we stay with each other, believe with each other, hear each other, work together, and build the unity that cannot be broken. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to the furtherance of this discussion.
Woo. Look, I'm trying not to shout right now, but I also don't want to miss it. I feel like I need to do a little something. I need to grab my fan. Oh, thank you so much for that word, those words. I will be resonating on that for quite some time. Steph, I hope you got all that. And next up, thank you, Nelson. Next up, we've got Carol Blackman with the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative out of Mississippi.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'd like to thank the SMA for allowing us to be here to share some of our thoughts today about where we are. And I also would like to thank the women of SRBWI, the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice, who are represented on this call today. And we have a pretty good number of us who are here. And just a word about who we are and what we do. We, can you all hear me? Okay, I saw when my internet was becoming unstable. So we work in the Black belts of Alabama and Georgia and in the Mississippi Delta in 77 counties across those 3 states. We do intergenerational work with women and young girls. And we do that work through the Young Women's Leadership Institute, the Human Rights Commission, and our economic development work. And we developed several years ago a relationship with Project South that evolved into where we are now with the SMA as a member of the Governor's Council. And we have 16 human rights commissions across these 3 states. We're in, as I said, in rural areas. The human rights commissions and their commissioners, the number of commissioners range anywhere from 15 to 50 members, depending on the size of the community. Well, our women are also engaged in not only finding their own voices and empowerment, but also in helping to engage and work related to civic participation. So recently in Alabama and Mississippi, we came together to support our sisters who hail from Georgia. And so we, in that role, we provided phone calls, text banking, and handwritten postcards of 300 per commission. And we know where we are. We know this place that we're in, particularly those seasoned members of us. We know that we are in a country where we were never intended to be free. We know that we're in a place that was created on the backs of many people, not just Black people. The leaders of this country, the forefathers, as they're called, took the land from Native Americans, took the labor from Africa. And you know, they left England, but they went back and they started to get all of England's money using those resources from us and Native Americans. We are here to participate in a process that will continue to build on the strength of our people and all people who believe, as we do, that as Project South and the SMA says, nobody is free until everybody is free. We had a meeting last night where we talked about where do we go from here. And where we're wanting to go is to be a part of the effort to help everyone to move in the right direction, to be guided in the right voice, the right tone about where we need to be, and then to help educate the people who keep pretending that they don't know the history of this country. Last night I was riding in my car, and I don't get to listen to the radio much because usually when I'm in the car, I'm on the phone. But I was riding in the car and somehow I ended up on a station where there were all of these commentators who were justifying the actions that we witnessed. And I think it was Nina who talked about the narrative. And, you know, when we think about it, it's like, it took me back to things that I had read about how slavery was justified, how all of the other unjust activities that have been executed in this place have been justified through many means, sometimes through religion, sometimes through the fact that they are the right people and are doing the right thing because they're good people. And where we are now, I would just like to say that we must all be woke. And I think I'm going to end with an analogy of one of Dr. Martin Luther King's sermons. I think it was titled Don't Sleep Through the Revolution, or Sleeping Through the Revolution. In this sermon, Dr. King talked about Rip Van Winkle. He talked about how Rip Van Winkle went into the mountains, the Poconos or somewhere, and slept for 40 years. The fact that when he left his community being so disgruntled, the way that many of us are now, he passed a sign on his way into the mountains that said, King George III, ruler of England, meaning that's who was in charge of the United States of America. On his awakening, when he came down from the mountains, there was a sign that said, George Washington, President of the United States of America. What this really means, people, is during that 40-year period, the American Revolution took place with England. Us not sleep through the revolution.
Thank you.
Did you all hear me at all?
Yes, we did. Thank you so much, Carol. We have a little bit, you know, I'm here with you
No.
in Mississippi. Our internet is not that great here, but thank you so much for that. I'm going to toss it back over to Steph and see, did you see any questions in the chat that we need to get to now?
No big questions yet. Some conversation. Definitely, the battle for the narrative is real, and that Nelson Johnson gave us some strong narrative in terms of something dying and something being born. And that folks are also well aware and looking out for a state response that's going to continue to deter. That this is not a broken system. It's built just how it always has been, and that they're going to use this moment to justify heightened control, and we've got to stay awake to that. And keep moving together, and that we are that the Southern People's Initiative is a vision that we can continue working. The People's 100 Days is the plan, and that y'all are in the right place at the right time. So thank you. Keep bringing questions, thoughts, suggestions, resources popping into the chat. Thank you.
All right, thank you, y'all. I think I got myself back together after Mr. Nelson sent me to that other place. And now we're going to have another one. Here we go. Next up, we have Miss Joyce Nelson with Beloved Community and the National Council of Elders, who we heard from earlier and brought us those beautiful songs from North Carolina.
Well, thanks again, Southern Movement Assembly. It's just wonderful to have this gathering. We should not take it for granted. You know, over the years, our people have had to fight to even assemble. You know, the story of the bush arbors, and just to even worship, we had to go out into hidden places to gather ourselves. So the fact that we're able to maintain organizations even across state lines so that we can share our humanity together and to, as you're saying, develop a plan for the first 100 days so as to sustain us for the long term, the long haul. This is not to be minimized. It's very important. But what's on my mind and heart right now is, how do we sustain ourselves individually and collective during times such as these? We've all almost learned how to, in church and in organizations and whatever, say the right kind of words, and we know how to throw our hands up and do and what have you. But how do we really sustain ourselves in those quiet moments when we're by ourselves, when we might be lying in the bed and concerned about how to feed our children the next day? How do we sustain ourselves as we're concerned about our aging parents, such as we are, and the health concerns, the homelessness, the joblessness, COVID, my God, COVID, all around us and deep, deep, deep within the very communities that have built this country in so many ways. Those of us who are indigenous people, those of us who have been enslaved people, those of us who have been the indentured servants, the poor whites who have, on whose backs this country has been built. And now we have another ism, another attack against us. How do we sustain ourselves? I shared with you before that I just sing and cry my way through it sometimes. But we've got to find those ways, and we've got to find those ways to teach our children. Because now things like, the obvious social problems, the drug abuse and what have you, the suicide and whatever is upon us, because the sense of hope and possibility is escaping a lot of folk. So the fact that people are angry and want to fight, that's really pretty positive. When you think about it, we do need to learn how to fight. But the fear of not having a place to go is what's on my mind, my concern. Martin King talked about hope being the final refusal to give up. And our people need hope. And that hope comes from a lot of different places. It comes from a clear path that's being laid out by a plan for the first 100 days that they can grasp and say, yeah, I can do at least that piece. If I'm in Georgia and yeah, we had to redo this election, but we got another chance now to organize some more people and get out that vote, and voila, we have a little bit of a victory. And of course, the very next day, we got that pushback, that mule that my husband talked about. But we've got to really keep elaborating what that win was about, the coming together people. But again, like I said, where do we get this hope from? It really is something that's inside, and it's there inside of each and every one of us, but we've got to learn how to dig it out and share it with one another. It comes from our connection to our families, our communities. So being always the one who's right, knows everything, is not always a very comforting piece. Being able to, but really our strength comes from being able to rely on one another, community as we call it, the whole sense of community. So that's what we've got to build more and more of. And I appreciate those who've gone on before. Sister Nia, I know what she's doing in Durham and in North Carolina. Sister who spoke of the rural women. I've had the privilege of sitting and talking with you before. Just this whole assembly itself is so important to garnering that hope for our people. As I said, hope is a tremendous, if we want to use the word, weapon. It is a tremendous weapon. In fact, it is stronger than the things that we see that might harm us, kill us, because that hope is that inner strength that we have to build. So I just urge all of us to find those places in ourselves, in our organizations. Don't be shy about it. We women are often those who most do the what's seen as the soft work. There is strength in that soft work, sisters. There is strength there. And don't be shy about it. Because if you don't have that hope, that sense of making a way out of no way, as Sister Fannie Lou Hamer and my grandmother and other people taught us. If we don't have that, then I don't care how much intellect there is. I don't care how many other, how well your social network might be or your website or whatever like that. You've got to have that other inner strength. And it's not just something that we old folk do. We got to be old, partly, by having that hope and that inner strength. We've been blessed to be married for almost 52 years come this May. Met in the struggle and still struggling. So sometimes I was sharing with my elder friends this morning, it's painful to think that we're not able to spend some of that precious time with our grandson and granddaughter, and that as hard as we fought to still have to be fighting, can get, can become dismayed, but we cannot. Give way to it, shed some tears, fuss, cuss, whatever works for you. But then get up and move from there and know that we're all connected over the ages, over the generations, and we've got to keep pressing forward, keep pressing forward. And just to wrap up, very closely aligned with hope is the question of belief. Believing in those values, such as truth, believing in community, believing in the power of love. I'll say it again, not mishy-mashy, but love. And knowing that that is what's stronger than anything, and continuing to persist for that. My husband shared a little bit about some of our story, and we have come to realize that some of what we've been through over the years has continued to be fuel for the larger movement. So we've come to embrace those hardships, those sacrifices that we had to make, but share them and share the fact that there is hope, there's possibility beyond whatever wounds you experience, and that the tears you shed, and we've all had to shed tears and may have more, but those tears, when they're put together with your hands and feet, your mind's working, can become the basis for watering the flowers of life, the flowers of possibility that our entire community needs. So I thank you for maintaining, building, continuing this Southern movement, because we know with all of what we've been through in the South, we are the hope for this country. That's part of what Georgia symbolizes. We are the hope, not to negate anything anybody else has done or must do, but because of all of what has been heaped on us in the South, we've got to take all of that and translate it into life, into love, into community, and build this country into being what it's meant to be. Blessings to all of y'all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Joyce. Thank you for that. Hope, belief, love, staying connected. It's what we do here in the Deep South, and we got to keep amplifying that up. Thank you so much. Next up, we've got, and Safia, you know I'm not going to say your last name right, so I'm probably not even going to say it. I'm just going to let you get it. Safia is with Black Workers for Justice in North Carolina and Georgia, and we'd love to have you come now and give us some words.
Oh, thank you, sis. I just want to give, first of all, give thanks to Allah and the Creator. So we always start with that, but following that, I want to thank Sister Joyce for like just bringing that home and just wearing us out and wrapping us up, as well as Sister Carolyn and Nina, girlfriend. Reverend Johnson, but Nelson, you know, you always come with it. Sister Nia, and I hope I didn't leave somebody out, and didn't mean to. But those words of healing, of sacred space that we create, that is within, that helps us to deal with the fight back. And I've been in a number of conversations over the last couple of days. And I think the two things that are coming forward is really being clear on we got to challenge and fight, and we got to also preserve and build and rebuild and strengthen our institutions that enable us to fight, enable us to survive, enable us to decide where we want to go besides simply surviving, but defining our future. Now is the time for us to dig in deep. We have to build and strengthen our local organizations, communities, networks, neighborhoods, coalitions. Our strength starts from there. This attempted coup, and we must be really, really clear. This wasn't just a riot. Yes, it was a right wing, with Klansmen, but who were having their day, but their day had a purpose. Their day had a purpose, not only to prove that white is right, white supremacy reigns, but also we have to remember that they represented the Bezos, the Koch brothers, the Fortune 500s. They represented, a part of, they're folks who paid for them to be there, who paid for that movement to sustain and grow and develop the weaponry across the South and across organizations. We have to understand that the really key dangers that they are representative of a class that is out to push us into the ground. And in fact, that, it is about making that money, that exploitation, that profit off of us. And that it is on that objective, no matter what, we are roadkill in their eyes. And so, we've got to figure out, we've got to work on where it is that our strength comes from. And so we're pointing out there are four things, and before I even go into the historic nature of this, because there's a real deep thing that it's not just simply about that they had a riot. It's not simply, although it's important to note that the Capitol Police opened the doors for them, that took selfies for them, that had to come from a command structure somewhere. But what do we need to do? There are four things that we've talked about that we've been building around. And when the Southern Movement Assembly talks about what we're doing, it's because hundreds of people have come from around the South and talked about what they're doing locally and what's important to them and what they have been learning and what has been successful for them. We've got to gather together and build assemblies coming together that talk about what do we need at the neighborhood level. We have more in common together than the divisions that the state that Donald Trump leads, the state that even those forces that open the door. We have more in common with each other, and our job is about our strength is about finding those commonalities. And so we've talked about building, and we have begun building assemblies of folks to put together common agendas. In North Carolina, with Black Workers for Justice, with the Southern People's Assembly all around the country, or around the South in particular, that these assemblies that help people put together priorities. You got the Southern Workers Assembly, you got Raleigh People's Assemblies, you got Black Liberation Assemblies, everywhere that people have a commonality, come together and build a priority and moving from that. So that's one of the things that we look at about, is like building ways for us to come together with each other in ways that are not just healthy, because it is healthy, of coming together, but shows our commonalities, and we see them all the time. Number two, we must protect and defend on all levels. We have a right to self-defense. We have a right to defend our communities, our homes, our families. And that takes place both in ways that are obvious in terms of training, that we won't get into. We have a right to self-defense. We have a right. Organization defends us. We have to build organization at the neighborhood level, at the city level, the county level, and bring them together. And so that question of protect and defend on all levels is the second area that we look at. Organization, yes, Ada Smith, organization defends us. Thirdly, that there is no time that we have to put together the demands of what we have in common and put them forward. We need to look at local, both city, county, town, state demands and put them forward in initiatives. Medicare for all, defund the police, reparations, $15 an hour or more, safe jobs, save lives, freeing political prisoners, understanding what political prisoners are, affordable housing. All of these are demands that we have a right to, and that we must come together and put forward in local or county or state initiatives. We cannot simply rely on what some other entity defines for us as what our demands should be, or tells us what they will do for us. We have to define that. And so that local work of building local agendas and challenging at the local, county, state, national levels should be. Number 4, we must connect across neighborhood, across county, across city. The movements and various movements for solidarity. You know, they emphasize what is different among us. My skin is darker than your skin. I'm a different gender than you. No, we have to come across that and find out what are our commonalities. So we must connect across neighborhood, across county, across city, regionally, building these assemblies, joining the various movements in solidarity. The gatherings that we have been building that make up these types of actions the Southern People's Initiatives across the South. Lastly, I also want to just talk some about that what we have also been fighting and what we've implied earlier about COINTELPRO and a military response to what we have been building our movements, all of our movements have been building for across the years. The counterintelligence program of the US military was something that was discovered when the Berrigan brothers went into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. And it had particular emphasis on the Black liberation movement. And while its target was the Black liberation movement, it was also against the Chicano movement, the Native American movement, the women's movement, all of the liberation movements that were developing. And so it's critically important that we understand what the motion has developed into. And I don't know what I just did with my phone, so I hope that we'll just keep going. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So the COINTELPRO was about destruction of Black leadership all across the board. And it was about undermining as well as killing Black leadership. It was about identifying and separating the youth from the freedom movement that was developing. It was about destroying the ties of our movement from the international, the global liberation movements that were developing at the time. It was about opposition to coalition building, the kind of work that we are doing now. And even though the COINTELPRO was supposedly set aside, it was then codified later on, legalized, and came back through what became the Patriot Act that was passed after 9/11. And so those objectives about destroying our various movements, about undermining the unity that we're developing across the movements, women, Chicano, Native American, LGBTQ, all of this solidarity that we are building now, it is recognized and seen as an enemy. And we must understand that, and we must be clear on the intent to undermine that. So I want to point out that the strength of the Southern Movement Assembly, the strength of our working together is about building a new society and gathering up. So it comes out in gathering and building people's assemblies. It's about protecting and defending on all levels. It's about coming up with local and national demands and platforms and programs. It's about us building structures that go across that are independent. It's about connecting us and seeing liberation movements as allied in solidarity with one another. It's about building our own people's mechanisms of fight back. And so I just want to, I see a note from Nelson and Joyce that I couldn't read and my phone won't let me, but we want to put forward that this is a critical time that to put forward that we must build these institutions of fight back, that we must build them local to national, that we must see the solidarity between our various movements and must step forward together. Because in the building of mechanisms of fight back, that include culture, that include all sectors of the southern side of our bases across the South, that we truly build a liberation society. And so I just wanted to, point those things of what we call the Southern People's Initiative. And hopefully, I started to say, inshallah, it means God willing, that, we've got new forces who are connecting in, and that we're building, and to join in with the Southern Movement Assembly. I just want to close out with something from Sweet Honey in the Rock. That my computer just went blank. Of course, it's not going to cooperate.
Shafia, while you pulling that up,
I got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Ella's Song. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until the killing of Black men, women, and children. Mothers, Black mothers, sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers, sons, and daughters and children. That which touches me most is that I have a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can be but shed some light as they carry us through the gale, the older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks with a voice, inner voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult, and I'll bow to no man's word. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Sister Safia. Every time we gather is a time for political education. Every time we gather is a time for us to uplift our ancestors, our history, and our culture. And it is all interwoven into the work we do in Southern movement work. So thank you so much for that. The request was that you would share, please, the 4 points that you made. If you could email them to one of us on the Governance Council, and we can include those in the notes that we email out with the recordings. Does that work? Thank you so much.
All right. Can I just add one little point? Is that I'm officially representing Black Workers for Justice, but I also, in terms of the political prisoners movement, and pointing out to particularly our younger brothers and sisters, is that when you are that arrest and that fight back, you are a political prisoner. And so I'm also working with the case of Imam Jamil El-Amin, and there are numbers of our fighters who are in jail, who've been incarcerated, some up to 50 plus years. And I want to put forward that, it takes all of us fighting together. And I wanted to acknowledge that there are folks who are coming on who are joining in the Southern Movement Assembly work that is going to go across the board. And so I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And also reminding us that we have federal prisoners that are scheduled to be executed within the next week. And for those of us, there's been some calls to action that will That's right. We'll make sure to post those calls to action on our Southern Movement Assembly social media as well. So we've got 3 more speakers for today. So if y'all bear with us, next up, but if you're like me, I needed this medicine, and I could go on for quite some time. All of these jewels, all of this brilliance that is showing up today. Thank y'all so much for sharing with us. Next up, we've got Ife Kilimanjaro with The Wind and the Warrior.
Greetings, good afternoon, Ma'aha. My soul is fed. My body is fired up. My spirit is nurtured. I'm so grateful. Thank you for all that has been shared and for standing on the shoulders of your ancestors who made the way for you to be here today. Just grateful for the brilliant minds and hearts who are making sense of all of what's taking place, putting it within context. It's helpful. It's helpful to be in connection, in a sharing space as we continue to assess and learn to strategize and organize in this moment, figure out what all of this means, what our solutions are, the next steps as we roll up our sleeves to engage in this marathon fight, this protracted struggle against the forces of white supremacy, of economic imperialism, of profit-driven environmental destruction, of cultural amnesia. Y'all, they're trying to keep us, I thought of the colonial thinking and the way that division foments this division and forgetting of who we are. It foments this way that we show up in the world with this kind of amnesia. We don't know where we came from, and we don't know what our capacity to bring about change is. We forget these things, especially when the force of the white reactionary forces is so clear and pronounced and permitted. So in this moment, the message that I want to bring from The Wind and the Warrior, which is we're a collective of spirit warrior women, the message I want to bring coming from that space is one that has been shared in different ways before, in the words that have been shared this afternoon, and it includes this medicine of leaning in and holding one another, holding our families, those who are chosen, those who are blood relation, leaning in and holding one another, those who rely on the ways that we show up for one another to provide security and protection, to provide love and affirmation, providing the listening ears and the warm hugs, safely, socially distanced, whatever that looks like, but showing up in demonstrated ways to let our loved ones know that we are here. We need that in this moment, even as we simultaneously are on the front lines of these fights. We need to check in and call, have these moments where we're looking at each other in the faces and knowing those whose faces are not showing, knowing that we're here showing up for one another. Tell people now that you love them, even as we're arming up and preparing to do a variety of things. I love you. Let us lean into the wisdoms and the lessons of our elders and our ancestors. Give thanks for all who are on this call. Those who have been here, who have been there and done that. And even though those who have been there and done that may have done that and been there in times and places that are different, in contexts that are slightly different, moments in history that are slightly different, there's so much that we can still learn, as evident by what's been offered today. Ask questions, be open to the answers, continue to learn. Let us lean into the energy, the heart, and the offerings of younger people, people younger than 25, those whose time on earth in this lifetime may be shorter, but who carry critical understanding of having grown up in this moment. Only they are the ones who have fully grown up in this moment and can really bring a kind of wisdom that through experience that provides energy and fire and some understanding about what we're facing and where we are. So this I appreciate what Mama Nia said earlier. I don't remember exactly, but it was something like trans ancestral or inter-ancestral connections, this way of connecting across generation in this living space, the world that we're in now, and across ancestors, bringing forward those wisdoms and lessons from the past, and then allowing them to move through us, and then carrying that forward to those who are yet to come. Let's accept and embrace the whole of young folks, not parts of them, not the parts that are considered acceptable or whatever. I don't even know what that means. But we want all of us in this, how we show up, and whatever judgments that people have in their minds, stop it, Dabi, as we say in my tradition, stop it. There's no place for that. We need all of us in this work. And so let's lean into that. The strength of our relationships and networks provide the hummus, that rich Black soil hummus that is necessary to sustain and nurture. In this moment, as we press for clarity and understanding, as we strategically advance and retreat where necessary, as we intelligently arm up in the ways that the conditions call for, let us be there for one another. And let's stop judging one another. Let's listen, lean into trust. And I just want to close with something that came out of this book that helped to pull together from what's called the 36 Greatest Goods. And just want to ask this question: what greater reward can one have than to initiate the turning of the tables when we won't be denied? To know that this time that we will win because we have prepared to not lose again. To know that in our hearts, that in the blood of our blameless ancestors lay the seeds of our own redemption and rebirth. What greater good is knowing that? Thank you.
We getting all this brilliance and love today. Lean into trust. Thank you so much, Ife. Thank you. Steph, I know you got your work cut out for you. Anything to uplift? We had a lot coming through this chat. For those of you that may not have saved the chat on Zoom before, if you go down to your chat and go all the way over to the right where there's 3 little dots in a square, click on that. And then I'll ask if you want to save the chat. Make sure you save that because there is all this beautiful responses and ideas and questions in the chat. Steph, anything you want to uplift? And then we'll have 2 more speakers and we'll close out.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll do a little bit more of a full synthesis after these 2 speakers, but just wanted to invite folks, because people have been asking in the chat what we can do, how we move, and that we feel so powerful that we have a plan. We are inside the People's First 100 Days. So I just want to lift up specifically what Ms. Joyce was saying about how to share our hope and how to take on that little piece that you can just do. And then what Ife was saying about really connecting with each other and making that real, affirming each other in some way. And that hope includes, from the chat, that hope is memory, that hope is a weapon, that hope is our inner strength. And there's a way within the People's First 100 Days. We're going to talk about the work teams. We're going to start meeting every Friday. We're going to get busy on this plan. And a vision that came out of the Southern Movement Assembly 9 was to get on the move, to do that connection in our neighborhoods, to get outside, take a walk, be COVID safe, take a role, meet with people, talk with people, call somebody who has to stay sheltered, but invite somebody to who you've been meaning to talk to as an organizing and community practice. Support each other. Let's heal together. How do we channel that rage, learn from each other, share the narrative that we are shifting today? What are people thinking about? What are people doing? And let's get beyond the bubble. Everybody has been talking about building this united front. That means we've got to lean into some of that uncomfortable space, lean into folks that we don't know, folks that might not share exactly every single thought or perspective or position. How do we widen our base and connect to our communities? So we're inviting people and folks, this came out of the SMA 9 and folks thinking the hashtag on the move for movement, that we're asking people to do these 3 goals: to stay connected, to stay healthy, to stay safe, get outside, get with your people, whatever way is comfortable for your body and safe for your body, but become more familiar with your neighborhood and area. Who are your neighbors? Where are the safe places? What are the potential resources? And post that out with that hashtag, so we can start to do that support with one another, start to build those loving connections, start to build this broader united connection base front for the Southern Movement Assembly, and then build into what Shafi was describing, those neighborhood assemblies, those county assemblies, those statewide assemblies that then circle back in and join up in the Southern Movement Assembly. So I'll stop there. We'll hear from the next 2 speakers, and then we'll do a little bit more full synthesis and action steps moving forward.
Thanks so much, Steph. And just to go back to how to save the chat, we'll do a little political education, technical education today. If you're on a laptop, and probably if you're on a tablet, if you go to your chat bar at the bottom of where you would type in where you're chatting, if you go all the way to the right, there's a little square with 3 dots. When you click on that square, it gives you the option to save the chat, and you'll save it. And when we close out this call, a file will pop up on your screen, and then you can decide where you want to put it so you don't lose it. I email it to myself because I never will remember where it is on my computer. Just a little tip. All right, so we've got 2 more speakers today, and keep putting your questions, ideas, thoughts in the chat. Next up, we'll hear from Shay Howell with the National Council of Elders, calling from up South Michigan.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for the wisdom that people have shared. And, you know, for the 3 days before before January 6th, I was having nightmares, and it was the same nightmare. It was the burning of the Reichstag in Germany, which happened just before Hitler. And I said to myself in the morning when I was awake, surely people in the Capitol know this analogy. Surely they are prepared for an assault on the Capitol. But because of those nightmares, I was watching it, and I watched on television as people were racing into the Capitol. And my first thought was, I know these people. I have seen these faces before. This was an American lynch mob, and there was no question about what they were doing. And the buffoonery that we saw is part of the history of lynch mobs in this country. White men and women and children gathered for picnics and hung Black men, women, and children while they took pictures of themselves, put them on postcards, and sent them around the country. This is as old as America. And when somebody who is going to be president of the United States says this isn't who we are, we need to educate him. This is exactly who we are and have been. And we need to understand the depth of this in our country. The second thing I want to say is, just because this is always who we have been, it doesn't mean there isn't something special about this moment. And there is something special about this moment. There are 3 things I want us to think about. The lynch mobs of the past were hidden in small towns by small-minded people hiding in white sheets. This was in the face of the entire world. Not a single person in the world can say they don't know what the face of American white supremacy is. We all just saw it. Second thing is, most of the lynchings in this country and the lynch mobs happened at a time when America was expanding. And as Nelson said, that old mule's dying now. We are at the end of empire. And when you are at the end of empire, none of the systems that were built for expansion are working anymore. And that's why the acts of individuals can have so much meaning. When systems are stable, it's hard to move. But when you're in a time of such dynamic change, it's possible to make enormous impact with the smallest of actions. So we are in a very opportune moment precisely because things are so unstable. And the other thing that is very different now is that part of the reason for this lynch mob was and is the power of the movement for Black lives. That has emerged to create a vision of who we could be, and that is scaring the hell out of some people. And so we have to embrace, protect, and make sure that movement moves forward in its fullest and most possible and farthest visions. So I think when we look at this moment, it is an extraordinary chance for us to do something that America has evaded for a very long time. But in this moment, our friend Rabbi Arthur on the Council of Elders uses the term, God sent us a lightning bolt. The coronavirus is a lightning bolt about the health disparities in this country. The ecological crisis is a lightning bolt about how we have to live differently and can't have an economy built on extraction. And now this lynch mob is a lightning bolt into how much injustice is in this country and how much violence there is to keep white supremacy in place. So what I think we have to understand is that the counter to white supremacy is a living democracy. That white supremacy is opposed to democracy. So things like this assembly, things like we come together, every time we take time with each other to talk and to make choices and to live differently is a time when we are fighting white supremacy, so that at last we can really do what we have all wanted to do, which is to find a way to create justice by telling the truth to each other about where we have been and sharing in our deepest sense where it is we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shay. We really appreciate you. And again, just big shout out to the National Council of Elders for being the catalyst for us having this call today. So thank you all so much for all the work you have done and all that you continue to do and hold for the rest of us. Thank you. So we'll have one more speaker and then we'll have some synthesis and next steps. Thank y'all for hanging with us today. Our last speaker today will be Emery Wright with Project South in Georgia.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And you know, I wanted to just start with thanking the Southern Movement Assembly for putting together this space and just really appreciate the Southern Movement Assembly for really paying attention to what did culminate at the Capitol on Wednesday for the last year, 10 years. And also just to say, I mean, one, going last, I'm blown away by everything that's been spoken so far, and just want to thank specifically Nia, Nina, Nelson, Carol, Joyce, Shafia, Shea, and Ife for just this has been such a rich and deep political education, and I know we're going to have our work cut out for us as a Southern Movement Assembly to figure out not only to get this recording out, but how to get just the content out that came out from this call in digestible ways, as many digestible ways as possible, because the political education is one of our big opportunities right now, and this call has been precious in terms of just lifting up some brilliance, and as Nina said at the beginning, that can build a narrative that is going to help us build movement power in this moment. I also just want to acknowledge, not only the work of the Southern Movement Assembly, but the work of, there are regional formations on this call that are powerful. And of course, the National Council of Elders who brought us here, Alternate Roots, the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, Southerners on New Ground, and just to name some of the regional formations represented on this call today. And I want to lift that up because that is more than a notion to have these type of formations all together, and that is real power. It's the type of the power collectively that Sister Joyce Nelson was challenging us to really work hard to build. And so also the benefit of going last in this lineup is I've just been editing out stuff I was going to say because most of it's been said. And so no need to repeat. I just want to make 2 points. I want to, one, say something about the very real split that is existing within power right now. And two, I want to say something about the reality of how we are part of a global reality. And so first, to the split. I think what showed up at the Capitol and on Wednesday, and what we've been seeing really over the last 10 years since Trepanya Bonner from Crescent City Media Group began to alert us as a governance council around this growing white supremacist vigilante infrastructure that's being built, yes, by billionaires in the grassroots. But there is a split, because I think power, that 1%, is of mixed minds. It's on one hand thinking that maybe fascism as a form of governance, not as just a word to throw around, but as a form of governance, is going to be the form to carry their power forward into the 21st century. And on the other hand, there's thinking that maybe sort of sticking with this neoliberal so-called democracy as a form of governance is going to be the way to go. And so right now, there's some danger with that split for sure, and we've all been speaking to that. But there's also some opportunity. Their forces aren't all united and aren't all lined up, and as it's been spoken already, we are much bigger if we can join together as a movement from the bottom up. But that split is not only one here in this country. I wasn't thinking about 10 years ago, but really have been thinking about now how that split is true globally. This was a huge incident and a global incident that has been talked about globally ever since Wednesday. I was talking to Project South as from the beginning, and acknowledging one of our founders, Rita Valenti, on the call. Since the beginning of Project South, we have been focused on the US South, focused also in our neighborhood in South Atlanta, but also international in both our perspective and in our work. And so right now we have existing partnerships and some exchanges happening with social movements in Senegal and in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Kenya. And I was talking to some of our brothers in Kenya the other day, and one, they were just sharing, there was globally some laughter at what was happening, because in terms of the government, this was like the bully being caught with their pants down. This was, a government that goes all over the world preaching democracy and fomenting coups. and all over the world, and here they are, look at this. And so satires in Kenya had a comic in the newspaper that said, you know, due to COVID travel restrictions, the Americans decided to do the coup at home this year. And so that was a real, you know, perspective. But on a more serious note, there was a lot of appreciation because of our connections between Project South and between even the Southern Movement Assembly and these sister movements globally. We had Yanamar from Senegal and Lucha Movement from Congo with us in Hazelhurst at SMA 8. They're aware of what we're doing. And from all those countries, there was big appreciations for what we're doing in the face of what they saw on Wednesday. But there was also a sort of request. And the request was, just as they're paying attention to and trying to figure out ways to connect with and be mutually supportive with sister movements over here, let's not just keep our eyes here within the US borders. There's an election coming up this week in Uganda where you have a Trump-like Museveni trying to hold on to power, just like, you know, Mr. Trump is here, and a people's candidate, Bobby Wine, who is really, you know, definitely would win if it was a truly democratic election. But there's been people jailed, killed in Uganda. We have to figure out ways, especially from here, to break the borders, the national borders that divide us, to break that border at the US-Mexico border and build bridges across it, to break the big border of the Caribbean Sea and connect with our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and in Latin America. And certainly part of the work of the Black liberation struggle is to break the border of the Atlantic Ocean and connect back not only with our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and Latin America, the Afro-Colombians, but also back on the continent of Africa. And so we need to really be using this moment like we have today to do deep political education with each other, to share analysis and perspective that's been shared. This has been just an extraordinary moment for that political education on this call. But this is a great group of people. There's been in and out. I think all 200 of the registrants have been in and out throughout this last couple hours. But we need all of our respective members, all of our respective neighbors, all of our respective community organization, you know, participants to be able to share some of this information. So it is going to be a challenge for us to figure out how to put this together in a way where we can get it back out quickly to each other, so we can get this information and this narrative, as Nina said, to back to us. And just the last point, you know, it was Nina who said that we need to be looking out for the counter response, and that counter response is going to come from both this sort of fascist, white supremacist vigilante force, but it's also going to come from the white supremacist neoliberal center. And especially with this incoming administration, we really need to be paying attention to how we can protect and defend, as Shafia was saying, to both of those counterattacks. As a movement, the Southern Movement Assembly, we're stronger together. Nobody's free until everybody's free. And here we are. We are building the narrative. We are building the work on the ground based on a precise political, social, economic understanding of what's happening. And we are going to, as Brother Nelson said, get to the other side and build this new world that we know is possible.
Thank you so much, Emory. It's great to hear from you. Great to see you. Before we get to Steph, just in your own home, just give it up for all of our amazing, brilliant, loving speakers today. Thank y'all so much. This is really just, I am full. I am full. All right, Steph G. Y'all about to see some magic happen right now.
No.
Bring it.
We're gonna keep it short. We're gonna keep it short. But I want to ask folks, actually, because of Emery's challenge, to us, to all of us, to get this content out there. This was 200, but we know there's thousands of people that are talking to each other and want and need this kind of renewal. And we've already got a commitment from one of our Appalachian crew up in Kentucky to help work the audio and get this out. And so thank you. That's what this movement is about. So I'd actually like to challenge everybody to make one commitment right now of what you can do, what you can take. If you want to do the On the Move for movement and get out there and talk to people, share some of these ideas, work them out, think about it. If you want to join the work teams, it is not too late. I'm going to put the sign up sheet right up in here. You sign up to become an SMA member and sign on to whichever work team you want to be a part of. We're going to meet. The first meeting is Friday, January 15th. That is our first organizing team meeting. One thing we're so proud about is that we can have this meeting, this kind of content, this kind of response in this type of chaotic week. But we have a plan. This is inside of a plan. We are on course. Suzanne started us off and said, we knew this. We knew we would need a People's First 100 Days way back in 2019. This is our plan. This is our path, and we're already a part of it. So just for a brief synthesis, because everything was so beautiful, and we will continue to work that out. And we've gotten offers to think about an op-ed, to think about articles that we can get out. We have the State of the South report. And maybe Wendy, you could pop that. We have some of our synthesis of so many years of work that is represented in the State of the South report. You can download it, you can share it. That could be the first topic of your On the Move for Movement walk in your neighborhood. What do you think about the State of the South report? What do you think about the People's First 100 Days? What are our priorities? So we can do that. But I just wanted to do a quick synthesis, and just that we started with Gil Scott-Heron and The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. That was raw. That was awesome. That's old school. We've been in this. We know that. We know that song. We know that truth. And so even though our eyes are glued to the television for everything that's happening, we also know that our people's movement is a huge and not always seen, not always recognized, not always televised. And so just as much, just to try to reflect back a little bit, just a tiny bit of what was talked about, that we know what we know, as Nia Wilson started us off. We know what we know. We know that this was a culmination of decades of right-wing, white supremacist violence organizing itself from the top, from the richest of the rich, from that 1% to the grassroots and to the chaotic looking mob that showed up on Wednesday. But we know this is a much more dangerous culmination that has been happening over decades. But we also know that this is in response to a culmination of our movements, a culmination of years and decades and work to regenerate the Southern freedom movement in the 21st century, to regenerate those connections, to build up those organizations and formations that Emory named, to represent those organizations for ourselves across the board. Spirit House down in Birmingham with the Earth Council, that's been building over these last few years. The Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, Alternate Roots, and so many of us that have been building our organizations, but not just staying in those singular organizations, building across, bridging across state lines, as Joyce said, building across front lines and communities, building across and through and with each other to build up this much larger force. That is what we know. That is what we have. That is what we can put to bear now in this moment, in the People's First 100 Days, as just the first step of a 2021 action plan, where we said, as an SMA body, as a Southern Movement Assembly, that our goals are to protect our people. Shafir reminded us that's our right to self-defense, to protect our people, to disrupt capital. Emory just described the split. People, what Shay and others described, there's an opportunity here to intervene. How do we intervene? We have to disrupt capital, and at the same time, we have to build up our infrastructure, build up our movement infrastructure, our governance, the governance that we believe needs to take us into the 21st century. We're not choosing between those failed states of fascism or the neoliberal order that's dying, as Nelson said, dying and kicking and angry and attacking. Y'all named threats that we have to look out for. It's not a game. We know from COINTELPRO, as Shafia reminded us, that turned into the USA Patriot Act, that's going to turn into something else next week, y'all. And it might say domestic terrorism in it. And let's not say those same words. If that's not what we mean, let's look out for what that state response is going to be. That's what Nina told us. Let's look out for where they're going to come at us in protest, in dissent, and justify heightened levels of control, justify white violence, because it's allowed, clearly. What do we need to do to build up our protections, our defense systems, and our power as we go into this People's First 100 Days? Some of the opportunities that y'all named: truth-telling, history-telling, and that's education. So the political education, the popular education. I heard several things in the chat. There's Destination Design School up in Georgia. There's Blue Ridge Mountain School. There's folks that are doing freedom schools across the South. Let's connect and combine. What is the education work that the SMA wants to do? How do we intervene on what we know in terms of the folks who are being manipulated to wage white supremacy? How do we intervene on that? How do we change that narrative? How do we build a broader base, bridging divides, not just divides, but borders? How do we bridge and build across a global movement with each other, but starting here at home in the South with our vision, the Southern People's Initiative, and our plan, the People's First 100 Days. And there's ways for us to join today and get started next week. We're going to be getting together on January 15th, 3 p.m. and every Friday for the next few months. You can do a work team, you can join us, or you can just come to the monthly membership assemblies every month. It's a beautiful piece of infrastructure. It's how we learned how to do Zoom. It's how we were able to pivot in a time of COVID crisis. We are organizing across 13 states plus. We got Up South on the call. We got Global South on the call. So we've had to use this infrastructure for a long time. We have a monthly membership meeting on the last Wednesday of every month. The next one is January 27th, and we've even got a registration link. We're ahead of the game. It's January 9th. We're coming together. So there is a way to join, and I'm going to put that in the chat, because these are our invitations, y'all. We have several invitations. Join a work team, get on the move for movement, or just come on to the monthly membership calls and share what you've been doing, share what you've been working on. Thanks, Wendy. And read the State of the South report. Let's get caught up with one another, and then let's start this year fresh. And I just want to give big appreciations to everybody, particularly Suzanne Farr, who really called the Council of Elders together, and they called us together, and the Assembly responded, and you all responded to be here this morning, this afternoon, and we will get this recording and documents and synthesis and quotes and rich and beauty out to everybody as soon as we can.
Woo! Look, I don't know if y'all needed this as much. I didn't even know how much I needed this. When Farr was like, we're going to do this Saturday, I was like, let's do it. Let's get it done. Because, you know, when the National Council of Elders asks you to do something, you say yes. That's always the right answer. Thanks again to everyone on the call. Big ups to the people that you don't see. Annie for running tech. Hopped on today. Thank you so much, Annie Thomas with Project South for running tech. To Suzanne Farr, my co-conspirator and facilitator today and helping convene us today, to all of the speakers that represented today, and to those of you who stayed on. We're past the 2-hour mark. Thank y'all for sharing all of your brilliance and love in the chat. And we look forward to building with everyone, especially over the next 100 days and beyond. So please do see where you want to plug in to that. Reach out to any of us that are on the call today and see if you have any questions about how to plug into those. Look for the connections that you've made through the chat with people who are in your region. We know that we're stronger together as we build together across the South and the Up South. Annie, can you take us all off mute? We're going to just give some affirmation, and then we're going to close out this call. Remember, love, hope,
changed it.
This is what we're all looking for. The Nelsons had Miss Joyce and Mr. Nelson have challenged us to keep that hope, that is a weapon that we need to be using as we spread love across the South. So thank y'all so much. Everyone can give a cheer, shout out, be safe. Love y'all.
Woo!
right.
We who
Yes.
believe in
Yes.
freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest
Peace,
until
y'all.
it
Man.
comes. That which touches me most is
that
that
I had a
courage to
Love
measure
y'all.
people.
Love you. Thank you.
I can't I'll keep going.
to others that which
That
was
which was taught to
Thanks, Suzanne.
me. We who believe in freedom cannot
Thanks,
rest.
all the elders.
we cannot rest.
We who believe in freedom cannot
Cannot
rest
rest
until it
till it
comes.
comes.
This is
Not
our report.
waiting to clutch for
Not
power, not
waiting
fighting
to
just
fight.
to find on me. Just
We're willing to
stand
stand up and fight.
fight against tyranny.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
We cannot rest. We
who believe in freedom
freedom
cannot
cannot
rest
rest
until it
until it
comes.
comes.
All right.
I see y'all.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
I'll take care.